Welcome to the SEGA Lounge, where we celebrate our love for all things Sega, including the games, the music, and the community. I'm your host, KC. Join me as I talk to different guests and learn more about their projects and passion for Sega. Hello and welcome back to the SEGA Lounge. It's been a while since our last episode back in December 2021, but I'm really excited to be back and ready to bring you more amazing content. As I discussed in one of my recent blog posts, find them at thesegalounge.com, 2022 ended up being a bit too much for me, so I decided to take a break from the internet. While this wasn't planned, it also meant I got to relax, play some games, and get energized to bring back this show and hopefully improve upon the work we've done during the past 6 seasons. I'd like to thank everyone who messaged me asking for the podcast to return. I did get your messages. Your support is greatly appreciated. Well then, let's get going, shall we? We're kicking off Season 7 with a special episode that looks back at some of the best moments from Season 6. I say best, but that's actually unfair. For one, I had a really hard time picking which moments to share today. Also, it's really unfair to leave out other great guests and conversations. But in the spirit of making shorter episodes, which I'm committing to this season, I really had to choose. So I went with 8 specific guests we had on the show in 2021. Throughout the season, I've had the pleasure of talking to some incredible guests, each with a unique story to tell about their experiences with Sega and the gaming industry. So, in this episode, I've selected some highlights from those conversations. From stories about how they got their start in the industry to insights into their creative process, these guests have provided us with some truly fascinating and entertaining content. I invite you to listen in as we relive these amazing conversations and get excited for what's to come in Season 7. On the very first interview episode of Season 6, Mark Saville, Communications Officer at Special Effect, came on the show with then Community Events and Volunteer Coordinator, Becky Frost. Here's Mark explaining what Special Effect do and why it's important to support them.
It's all about helping people as individuals and helping them to get the very best from their gaming experiences. We essentially help people with physical disabilities to game to the best of their abilities. So what we do is we see people and we ask them what they want to play and what abilities they have, and that can vary from somebody who might have an injured thumb right the way through to somebody who's got a spinal injury and can only move their eyes or something like that. So and we then work with them to see what's possible and whether we can get them, playing the games that they want to play. And if we can, then getting them to play to the really, the best they possibly can, because that's really quite key. It's not just helping people to play games, it's helping people to play games as best they can, because that really, really sort of brings out the best in people. I was just listening to a podcast that our CEO did actually at lunchtime, and he was recounting the story of somebody we helped who hadn't played his brother at FIFA for 15 years, and because he'd got muscular dystrophy. But when we worked out a setup for him with assistive equipment, first game he played, he beat his brother 5-1. You can't put a price on that. You really, he was beaming from ear to ear. So. And that's the kind of a difference we want to make, because it's not just about having fun, it's about inclusion, it's about building self-esteem, it's about banter. And it's an opportunity so people can show other people what they really can do, and just seeing that come out time after time is an inspiration for us, and which is why we're so excited to tell the stories, really. Because there are so many lovely stories about sort of the way that people are benefiting from what we're doing, and I think not just the gamers themselves. I was talking to I think the mother of a gamer a while back, about a year or so ago, and she was saying, it helps me as a parent because my child can now play games. He can put the headsets on. He can be himself with his friends. During the day he's in a wheelchair. He's with a carer all day. His friends come up to him in school. He's a bit restricted in what he can say, what he can do. But at night, when we've set up all the assistive gear, he's able to play with his feet and his fingers. Then, as I say, we put the headphones on. I just close the door, and he can be with his friends and just be himself. And again, that's so valuable for people.
Speaking of which, if you're listening to this on the weekend it dropped, it's Game Blast 23 time. Game Blast is a huge event that gathers the gaming community around a common goal, raising funds in support of special effect. I'm taking part alongside fellow Team Radio Sega members, and I'll be streaming on my Twitch channel and doing a radio show on Radio Sega as part of the festivities. If you can, please consider donating toward this amazing cause. Your support is much appreciated. More news on that later. Jörg Tittel is a former official Dreamcast magazine writer, which is the reason why I invited him on the show. As it turns out, there's much more to him than that, and we ended up talking about his upcoming game, The Last Worker. And little did we know at the time that he would also be behind the Cosmic Smash revival in the works for PSVR 2. But the story of how he met Shinya Nishigaki of Ill Bleed fame and ended up getting added as a character to the game is one of the most wholesome moments of Season 6 for me.
There were so many, but there's one moment that turned into a really dear friendship that I will forever cherish, and that was when I'd first got wind of this game Ill Bleed being in development, and it looked so insane, the sort of B-movie slasher horror sort of with weird humor thing that was being made by the guy who had before that made Blue Stinger, which was fantastic on Dreamcast. I approached him, and he was in Japan, Shinya Nishigaki, and he replied in very rough English, because he didn't speak it very well at all, and so he started talking to me via translator. And then I said I really, really wanted to do an article about that for the official Dreamcast magazine. And not only did I ended up being an article in official Dreamcast magazine, it became the cover article of official Dreamcast magazine. And he was so grateful for that, because he didn't have a US publisher yet at the time. And so this got him a US publishing deal. And it became this cult thing, because everyone started talking about Ill Bleed. And then Shinya was so grateful for that, he surprised me one day and created a character that was named after me. And not just named after me, but also looked exactly like me in the game. Exactly like my 18-year-old version at the time. The last name was changed from my weird title to Baker. So it was Jörg S. Baker. And then he asked me, okay, I also want you to do some voiceover work for it. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know you're an actor and stuff. So I went to, I was flown to the West Coast and did this completely bizarre voiceover session for 2 days where we were. I mean, the script was crazy and was completely mad, and we were. I think I'm not sure if we were consciously embracing the sort of B-movie tone of it, but the performances are notoriously, one could say, pretty terrible. But I think it just added to the cult status, and it fit the graphics amazingly well. I mean, it's like it had to be like this. I mean, it couldn't have been performed straight because it would have been weird. And I remember that one day we were all sort of working away. We had very few hours. I mean, the budget was minuscule for the whole thing, and there was this whole thing set in a warehouse, and some sort of with conveyor belts and stuff, and we were sort of saying things like, I forgot the characters' names now, but like, oh, such and such is stuck in the belt conveyor. Oh, did you look down the belt conveyor? Oh my God, over there, the belt conveyor. And sort of a few hours into this, I go like, I being the only foreigner in the room and all the others Americans, and I go like, so I guess, what is a belt conveyor? And they go, yeah, it's the thing in the warehouse, the thing in the factory, the kind of, it should be conveyor belt, shouldn't it? And so we had half an hour of recording time left. And so we all had to like flip through our pages. This was before, we all used paper, right? So we flip through our pages and find all the lines where belt conveyors were mentioned, script, and then re-record them out of context. So Lani Manella, who was directing the whole session, I remember going, okay, let's go. Okay, I found another one. And so everyone's like, hey, find such and such. And then conveyor belt over there. And and the game then came out. It became this cult. And actually, like a quick shout out to my friend Dominic, who actually had a copy of the US version, because I lost my original copy of it in the warehouse disaster, and actually storage disaster. And he gave it to me and his to me, which was an incredibly precious thing, because I do revisit it often now, and actually managed to finish the game now and see my own weird face in it.
Okay.
So that's a big memory, and I miss him dearly. He passed away 2 years after the game was released. Shinya did, and he was a dear friend.
Hailing from Brazil, Renato Almeida grew up a Sega kid, and turns out he's also a great storyteller. He currently works closely with Sega through his PR company, but the story of how he actually met the current CEO of Sega at E3 a few years ago is definitely an interesting one.
I was shaking a lot, I was really, really nervous, but it helped a lot that was my first international trip ever, and it was a trip to Los Angeles for E3, so the ecstasies and the whole joy took over. So it helped me to not think about the situation and my nervous breakdown that I could have in a meeting with the Sega people, and that's all the information that I had. Okay, I knew that we were going to have a meeting on the second day of E3, and it was going to be like a dinner. Meeting/dinner, and okay.
With maybe a few people from Sega, whoever they were, right? So nothing special.
Yeah, I knew
already special because it was Sega, but no one special, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So they told me that a brand manager would be there, and another person from the marketing side, and that's it. That's everything I knew, and it was nice. And it was great because on the first day of E3, we the three of us, we stopped by Sega's booth, and I saw that my boss was talking to Ken. Remember Ken Ballo, that guy?
Yeah.
From my blog story, he was there, and oh my God! 6 months ago, I was writing about you, inside my head. Please, I didn't tell him that. I was.
Of course. You were yes, composure.
Super serious,
cool,
cool businessman, etc.
Yeah, of course, experienced. Yeah.
Yes. So, but inside, I was getting crazy. It was amazing. But okay, so Ken will be there. Nice. That's someone that I already know about this guy. I made my research on him. Okay, cool. And there was this other professional from Sega back in the day, and she is great. I love her. To this day, Jen Groling. She was creative services at Sega. And that's it. I knew that they were going to be there, and that's it. And okay, so let's wait until Wednesday, second day of E3. Let's do a marvelous job at the show floor, and when we are done, we will have a great time with a dinner in a fancy restaurant with the Sega people. And it was like a barbecue-like restaurant, and I was very composed. I did my breathing exercises or whatever to stay sharp. Yes, exactly. But when we entered that restaurant, the first person that I saw, and it was a thing that it was very funny because it was like my vision corrected itself and focused on one person only, and it was Haruki Satomi. I knew him back in the day. He was I don't know if he was VP already, but he was very close to be the vice president. Mm-hmm. And I knew that that guy was huge, one of the big shots at Sega, of course. Everybody knew that. If you were a Sega fan back in the day, you knew about him. And my whole work of preparation went down the drain. You know, I had to cool down all over again. And I was I was thinking, what would be my part on this meeting? You know, oh my God, what should I say? You know, what would be my reaction? I was trying to think ahead of me and prepare myself, but obviously everything started really good. We were introduced, everybody introduced, everybody one to the other, so it was okay. So it started with the introductions, some jokes, some laughs. We had the opportunity to talk more about Brazil. They told us about the plans of Sega of bringing this expansion to Brazil in terms of communication and presence and etc. etc. We were also eating, so it was all doing very, very good. My part until that part, I was only laughing and adding some phrases here and there, you know, helping my bosses to tell the story. But at some point, my boss he said something like that. But it's also very important that we share our actual impression of Sega's presence here in Brazil, there in Brazil, and to tell you more about Sega and this perception. I would like to Renato to take the stand. So I was like thrown,
put in the hot seat.
Exactly. So, and it was amazing. I don't know what happened there, but I managed to secure a good spot, and I had my chance to present my vision and my thoughts and what I've learned, and also everything that I've been learning for the past 28 or 27 years. I don't recall if I was 27 or 28 back in the day. But growing up as a Sega kid has helped a lot, you know. So because I was living that story. I was not only witnessing or only studying. I was living, you know. So I remembered all the difficult times. I remembered all the special times, all the great points, all the down points, you know. So what I did was like my honest take on the whole situation, plus sharing what I knew and what I thought that could be improved, you know, and obviously taking this to the PR side and to the communication side, and it was great. It was great, you know. We've managed to secure the contract, and I was the head of the account from 2011, from July of 2011 to March 2014.
How do you get to work at Sega? That's probably a question many of us asked growing up. I know I did. Most of us probably never acted on that childhood dream, but Tim, Sega Master Tim, went so far as strong-arming Sega of Australia into getting him a job.
What happened was I became like a really big fan of Sega. A really, really big fan. And I wanted to know more about them. And I noticed that when I looked on the back of one of the boxes, one of the cartridges of the Master System games, there was an address in San Francisco. And I thought, well, how about if I write a letter and tell them how much I love Sega? All right, so I wrote off a letter and sent it off through the mail. And, I was hoping like for a reply or something of that. And I reckon it was about four 5 months later, I got a reply from a girl by the name of Judy Jete. She sent back a letter, and then we became pen pals from that point on. We were sending letters left, right, and centre. I still have the letters to this day. They mean so much to me. I just have them in a special little box off to the side. And I can see all the things that were written. So, they're dated like 1989. And she there's one where she writes, have you watched the movie Big with Tom Hanks in it? We're talking about that long ago.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would actually call up their hotline and I would speak to Judy. And it was just so much fun. And she'd send over photos and so I'd send them over too. And it just made you... It's amazing back then how big the world was.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine, like, here I am, almost 50, and I'm talking to you like you're next door to me. Back then, that was unimaginable. So, we built this great relationship, and one day I got this package through the mail, this huge box, and I hadn't had any warning. And anyway, I opened it up, and I think the game was Gabelius. I think I'm pronouncing it right, for the Master System. And what it did was it was showing me like stage level and what to do in each stage. And then I realised these are walkthroughs and cheats. So what I had and what I had was just absolutely amazing, because not only did I have all the walkthroughs for the games in Australia, but I also had all the walkthroughs and cheats for games that hadn't been released. And here's the cherry on top. Games that had not even been announced.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So was it like a book or?
No, they were like photocopied sheets.
Oh.
And what it seemed to have come from their hotline.
Yeah.
So there would be like little inserts and if you look carefully on the internet, you can actually find examples of these. But these were all just walkthroughs, cheats for tons of games. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I tried a few of the cheats. That was cool and all that. Anyway, one day I bought a game. I got Afterburner. And then I looked on the back and there was like this SEGA hotline, which was up in Sydney. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. Is there a SEGA hotline in Australia? So I call them up and I was expecting like it'd be like a recorded message or something like that. But it was an actual hotline. So I rang him up and I asked a few questions, tested a few questions. And I thought, oh yeah, they know their stuff. And I also asked, are you actually SEGA? And they said, yeah, we're SEGA. Oh, right. Okay. And I hung up the phone and I just thought, here's my niche. This is what I could do for a living. So I was about 18, 19 when I came about that realization. So just about every week I was ringing them up and asking them, how do I get a job there? I kept on bugging them. And yeah, so I always say, I reckon they just gave in. They thought, oh, look, this guy was it. Just give him an interview, see how we go. So bless my parents, they paid for my flights up there, and it's not like, the sort of cheap flights you can get nowadays for like $10 return or anything like that. No, flights back then were bloody expensive. So yeah, they paid for my flight up there and back. So I sat there for the interview. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, look, I've never sat in an interview. Like, all I knew what a job was what my dad did every day. So that was my only comprehension of what a job was. So they asked me all these questions, so you're from Victoria, blah, blah. oh, you like Sega? Oh, yeah, I love Sega. But the thing back then was that they'd ask you this like a key question, and that was, what makes you think that you're most worthy to get a job here? What makes you stand out from anyone else? Mm-hmm. Why should you be working for Sega? And I had it already. Because in my bag I said, well, let me show you something. Now, I can't remember what the game was, but I pulled out this sheet of paper and I slid it across the table. I'm reading through this and they're going, well, we haven't got these sheets. Where'd you get it from? And I said, oh, well, let me tell you.
Would you like to know? Oh, okay.
And so they go, oh, do you think you got any more? I go, oh, I've got a hell of a lot more. And then I said, oh, well, can we have it? And I said, oh, well, depends, So anyway, got back on the plane, back down to Beechworth, and I got a call a few days later, and they offered me a job.
Game Blast celebrates 10 years with its 2023 edition, and Team Radio Sega are again taking part. If you're able to, please consider donating to support the work done by Special Effect. My personal campaign can be found at thesegalounge.com/GameBlast. A link to the full schedule of Team Radio Sega Game Blast 23 activities can be found in the show notes. Thank you for supporting Special Effect.
Games are a big part of my life. With my disability, it was one of the only things I could do for enjoyment. So gaming has really opened up that door for me, and it helps connect you to other people in this world.
I can't do a lot by myself, but I can play video games on my own, which gives me a good sense of independence and achievement.
It's just a release from the monotony of the day. If you're not feeling well or you're uncomfortable, it takes your mind off it and gives me something to look forward to.
As a parent, it's made so much difference to Chase being able to access video games. It creates a level playing field. He can do an activity that he wouldn't be able to do in normal day-to-day life. But even better, with gaming, he can play alongside someone.
Special Effect are bringing families and friends closer together through video games. The setups we create are personalised, so people can play to the very best of their abilities. And this opens the door to inclusion and independence, confidence and creativity. Help us level the playing field and create many more magical gaming moments.
Russ from Retro Game Core came on the show and told me how the 2020 lockdown and being in a creative rut ended up spawning a YouTube channel, which is now his full-time job. Congrats, Russ! Be sure to check out his content if you're into handhelds with emulating capabilities.
During the whole COVID lockdown and everything else like that, I was at home for a long time and I was trying to figure out just creative outlets. I've always been involved in creating things. We can talk about this later, but I was actually a food blogger for 10 years, and I stopped doing that around a year ago. And so I didn't want to do any food stuff. I was done doing that stuff. I'd already written like 3 cookbooks by then, and I was like, I'm done doing that creative thing, but I want to do something else. And I actually was writing a novel of all things, and I was like, I'm going to write a novel. And so I was getting into it, and I just realized that it wasn't a good fit for that time in my life. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to play some video games. I don't need to be creative. I'll go through the backlog of all the PS4 games that I have, And so it was, I think, right around the time that The Last of Us Part 2 came out and stuff. And so I picked up that game and I played through it, and I really loved it because it's almost like playing a movie, Modern games nowadays are so different. So I played through that and I was like, that was beautiful and that was a lot of fun. And then at some point, I saw an advertisement or something, or I watched a YouTube video about the RG350 device. And it looked like a good fit. You know, I saw that there were more powerful things out there, but I didn't want to spend a lot of money and stuff. And so I picked up an RG350 for, gosh, I think it was around, $80 or something. And then it took a month and a half or something to actually get to me. And so it finally gets to me, here in Hawaii. And I liked it a lot, and I was really excited about this idea of being able to play all these games on something that was kind of like a Game Boy, and I never really owned a portable handheld system until like the PSP and the Nintendo DS. And so I really like this idea of playing all these old favorites again. But I found that the software and the firmware and stuff were very difficult to navigate. I'd never used a Linux-based system before. I'd never, I'm not even very familiar with like Windows PCs or anything. I've been a Mac user for almost 20 years now. And so I had to jump back into that and like get reacquainted with PCs and then like learn about Linux and everything else. And as I was learning it, I found that the instructions and the guides were just scattered throughout the internet. They were everywhere. You could find a little bit on Discord, but then you'd find a little bit on Facebook and a little bit on Reddit. But there was no like single place that I thought was really helpful. Yeah. And so I said, well, this is a good creative place to like do this kind of thing. And like I mentioned, I had been a food blogger for 10 years. I knew my way around like building websites and things like that. And so I built a website and I was like, I'm just going to put RG350 guides on here, basically. And I did that for several months, actually. And I made a couple YouTube videos, but the only reason I made them on YouTube was to embed them onto the website. I wanted everyone to go to the website. I didn't really want anyone to subscribe to me on YouTube. I was just looking at having a better like experience for the browser when they're going through my website. But then all of a sudden, like I got an RG351P and I was like, well, let me do like a review on this, an unboxing or something. And a Retroid Pocket 2, I grabbed one of those too. And I just started expanding the website a little bit. And then all of a sudden I realized that I was getting a lot more intention or engagement and stuff on the YouTube channel than I was on the website. And I thought, well, let me just push these together and do like equal parts effort on both of them. And so ever since then, so I started the website in like late July, and then I started really getting into the YouTube videos around September timeframe. And around October, I actually went back to work. I was doing home, like working from home all the way up through October. And then I went back to work right when I was starting to really pick up momentum with the YouTube channel. So now ever since then, I've just been kind of straddling the two, doing my day job and then coming home and doing what I can. And then on the weekends, just like full tilt, doing as much work as I can for the YouTube channel. So relatively new. We were about, 6 months into it now of me being dedicated to the YouTube channel. But it's been a lot of fun. And video is something I never really was comfortable doing. That's why you don't see my face on camera and stuff, because I never felt like I was well suited for video. I like writing, I've always been pretty handy at that. But the video is a whole new medium. And I found out once I got the hang of it that it became very exciting for me. I was a photographer with the food blogging stuff as well. So I knew my way around a camera, but never in the way of making video. And so it's just been a learning experience. I cringe every time I watch one of my older videos because I'm like, oh, I was such an idiot even a month ago, but nowadays, it's getting a little bit better every time. So
have I ever told you I'm a big Shenmue fan? Every week? Nice. After Corey Marshall and Lissel Wilkerson in previous years, Season 6 brought along another OG Shenmue voice actor to the SEGA Lounge. Eric Kelso was a delight to talk to, and he even shared some of his Ericisms. When asked about the most iconic character he ever voiced, Eric had this to say.
I would have to say Ren from Shenmue 2.
Yeah?
Okay. A lot of people, know me as Jackie. But he doesn't really have a lot of lines. A lot of people know me as Paul Phoenix from Tekken. But I would say the Shenmue fans are the hardest core.
Yeah.
Because of them, a game that had been dead for 15 years came back to life. Just because of them, basically. And in that whole time, I've been in contact with the Shenmue fans of the game, and they've included me on things. They've asked my opinion or interviewed me, and and they come to Japan to do the sojourn of Rio kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they contact me, and we go out for dinner and drinks, and so they really formed kind of a family and a very loyal following. And so they have made me appreciate that game even more. And I think Ren is the character of all the characters of all the games I've done who has had the most lines and the most kind of character development. I'm not sure how far Ren can really develop, but he's fairly two-dimensional dude. But I like him a lot. I like Ren a lot. I think, he seems to be a really cocky, kind of just money-hungry, selfish guy. But actually, he helps Rio out a lot, and they've become good friends. So he's been the most fun to do, at least, for sure.
Yeah. It's like the anti-hero, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah, for
type
sure.
Of guy.
And he's kind of the comic relief of the show as well, of the game. I get all the good lines.
A testament to the passion of the Shenmue community. Let's get Shenmue 4. When I asked him what makes Shenmue such an incredible and impacting experience, Eric also provided great insight.
Technically it was the first real in-world kind of game that you could play. You could walk around and check things out and open doors and, get food and talk to people. And it was just so immersive into a whole new world. And I think that had never really happened before. And that's part of Suzuki-san's brilliance of just creating completely new ways of playing. So I think that was really addictive in a way. And it's almost a spiritual engagement, it has a real wonderful Asian, kind of Japanese and Chinese kind of magic to it that I think a lot of people in the West has never experienced before, which is very appealing to me. I live in Japan, so that's always appealed to me. And the graphics, everything, I think it was just very intelligent and very thought out. And it wasn't just like a kid's game that you play. It was an experience, that even adults can be, fascinated by. And I think it takes some dedication. It's not the kind of game that you just, stick a quarter in and play for one round and then, go play another game.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where if you're going to sit down and play, you're going to be there for hours. And I think that was the first game to really give that experience.
Dean Mortlock stopped by the SEGA Lounge last season to share some stories of his days working as a video game journalist and to tell us more about a new SEGA mag called SEGA Powered. I was curious to know what the tone of this new publication was going to be. How does this new SEGA mag compare to the tongue-in-cheek style of SEGA Power, and what's the focus of the editorial team?
Hopefully we'll keep it fun. SEGA Power was known at various stages for being quite hopefully a funny mag. We didn't take it all too seriously. But what obviously you have to bear in mind is that, as you understand, the audience has grown up with the format. So the people that were buying SEGA mags 25 years ago are now in their 40s. So you have to adjust the tone accordingly. And also the audience that we're aiming at are a lot more hardcore. They're hardcore gamers, they're not casual gamers like they used to be. They're people that, are still playing games on SEGA formats on a regular basis. They know their stuff and they expect you to know your stuff as well. Otherwise there's no point in buying the mag. So we will be we'll do some fun stuff, but equally we'll do some kind of more, we'll make sure it's informative, interesting. It's going to be quite packed. There's a lot in there, and the features will have a lot of elements to them. There's lots you can dip into. Because, as I said, the people that are buying it, they don't want to read stuff that they already know, and they don't want to read kind of stuff that isn't of interest. They want to make sure it's interesting. So we're going to do a lot of homebrew stuff. We're going to do a lot of independent stuff, because there's obviously still a growing community in that, where new games are being released, and the new games are being released regularly. As you know, there's the whole Sonic challenge has just been announced, so the kind of fan-made versions of the games and the levels, and some of those are fantastic. So we'll be covering all that sort of stuff as well, just because I find it interesting, and I think other people will. If they're not into that whole scene, then I'm sure they get something out of it. So yeah, there's a whole. We're trying to cover quite a lot in a single mag, but I think we've got it focused to now the point where we kind of know the structure of the mag. Now it's just a case of filling all the pages. The tone is. I mean, we're adults now, and the people that are buying the mags are generally going to be adults. So we will talk to them as adults, but have a little bit of fun along the way. And if somebody says, this is the thing, you always get somebody says, "Oh, it's too serious," or "It's not fun enough," or "It's too silly." You never make everyone happy. But as long as 90% or so are extremely happy, then I've done my job well.
Finally, I really need to highlight my chat with industry legend David Warhol. This was a listener suggestion and one I am very glad I followed through with. Here's David sharing the story of how the character Bug came to be.
I had two producers at the time, Ann Ladayev and David Bean, and we were having dinner one night, and it was Ann Ladayev who, when we were just knocking around, what kind of characters? A penguin? Who's done a penguin? How about an armadillo? No, that's and it was Ann who said, "I know, Bug." And then it just was like, oh, yeah, that makes so much sense. So I got to credit Ann with introducing that into the conversation. And then we gave that over to Jeff Cook, our art director. And Jeff, at first, I don't know if you guys remember the Bloom County cartoon character Bill the Cat. This totally mangy cat that was anti-Garfield. It was just one big bulging eye, tongue hanging out to the floor. Just this outrageously insipid cat. So our first concepts for Bug were to go with that kind of Bill the Cat kind of thing. He was from the wrong side of the tracks or wrong side of the garden kind of thing. Just this, mangy bug. And we had done a couple of iterations for Jesse Taylor at the time, and he was like, "Nah, this isn't in the mark. Nah, this isn't good. This isn't Disney enough." So Jeff finally really cleaned up the character. And if this hasn't been brought out before, if you take a look at like big red shoes, Mickey Mouse, white gloves on the hands, Mickey Mouse, two big googly eyes. Well, Mickey Mouse has two big googly ears. The idea was to cast it in something that somebody would feel immediately familiar with. Wow, I get it. I can identify with this character because we have for 100 years now. So Bug was different enough, but still familiar enough. So that's where the graphic look came from. And yeah, Jeff was a brilliant artist on that. And incidentally, he did a character study of Bug where he did 8 or 9 expressions, kind of a little character Bible where he was confused and he was angry and he was devilishly, just all of these expressions. And as I was looking at it, I'm saying, this is great, but Jeff, I've seen you make all of those expressions, all of these. Because Jeff was a very expressive guy, but when he looked confused, he would put on this really totally confused face, and there it was on Bug as well. So he was probably very autobiographical in the emotional range that Bug has was all Jeff.
And probably my favorite moment from this interview was this bit of information about the Saturn's 2 processors.
Another thing I like to say about Bug is that the Saturn had 2 processors, but you needed to figure out how to get them to operate without stepping on one another. And because we were so focused on the fun, the gameplay factor, how can we make this thing great? The first thing the first processor did was turn off the second processor, and then we ran the whole game on the first processor, which worked just fine because we weren't trying to do that 3D rendering. I mean, the backgrounds were all 3D rendered. But that's where we chose to put the power of the graphics chips and all that.
I had a lot of fun reliving these moments, and I hope you did too. Of course, leaving out all the other guests is unfair. And let's not forget about the great roundtable and documentary-style episodes featuring our good friends from around the Sega community. Those were all a great deal of fun to do, and I'm hoping to get more of them done this year. So the only solution here is go listen to the entire Season 6. It's available everywhere. So this means the SEGA Lounge is officially open for another season. Yay! Next week, we'll be back with some friends of the show to take a look back at the year of 2022 in terms of what Sega had to offer, as well as share our expectations towards 2023. It's not like it'll be March by then or anything, right? As always, if you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, I'd love to hear from you, so don't hesitate to reach out and let me know what you think. podcast@thesegalounge.com is the email address to use, but you can also use our social media outlets. And we now have an email newsletter to remind you of new shows and new stuff happening around the lounge, so be sure to subscribe to that. A good way to do so is to head over to thesegalounge.com/newsletter. That's it. I'm out of here. Thank you so much for listening. It's great to be back. Follow us on your podcast app of choice and come back next week for some more Sega goodness. Bye-bye. The Sega Lounge, hosted by me, KC, and part of Radio Sega's network of live shows and podcasts. Theme song and incidental music by OSC. Find them at opussciencecollective.bandcamp.com. Got any suggestions? Drop me an email to podcast@thesegalounge.com. Follow us on Twitter @thesegalounge and like us at facebook.com/thesegalounge. You can find previous episodes of the show by going to thesegalounge.com and wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. A Mixed On Productions podcast.